Do you want an amazing marriage? Are you ready to take your marriage to the next level? Then stick around for your Marriage Matters podcast with marriage coach Lynn. Let's put some fun and sizzle into your relationship.
What makes a good husband? This is the topic I want to talk about today. Let's talk about the importance of the husband's participation in the marriage. And what better way to do this than inviting Bob back again to co-host? Today we will talk about the value and importance of a husband in marriage. And next week we'll talk about the importance and value of fathers in the marriage. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Lynn.
Thanks for joining me. We didn't really discuss this much before this podcast episode. I just wanted to make it unscripted and conversational. So I guess we can just jump right in with some of the qualities and some of the things that go on in our marriage and maybe some observations we have as we look out there. And so, I don't know, I guess I'll throw out there that what makes a good husband is he responsive? Face it, we have many roles in life. We're a wife, we're an employee, we're a mom, we're a daughter, we're a friend, and sometimes life can get busy. We try to keep it quiet, we try to keep it calm, we try to stay organized, but sometimes you need your husband to be responsive when you talk to him, when you ask him questions, when you have requests. And I'm not just saying you make this honey-do list and have your husband fill a role of doing everything that you want done. I'm just talking about in general responsive. When you talk, does he look at you? Does he show an interest in you?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I was going to ask you about what you exactly meant by responsive, but I can see what you mean, that, for you guys out there, when your wife wants to talk about something, put down the newspaper or put down your phone or whatever it is that you're doing and talk about it. And it may not be something you really wanted to talk about at that time, but you do it because you love your wife and you want to support her in what she's doing throughout the day. And it's not just, and you have to remember, it's not just about you, obviously. And that's what really makes a marriage work on both sides, is when they both think that way.
Yeah. And I know that many people have struggled and even come to the point of divorce because their spouse just doesn't want to talk to them. They shut down, they clam up. There's many reasons to get to that point, but you have to, again, if you've listened to my first 9 episodes on the Gottman sound relationship theory, and that is showing fondness and admiration, having a positive perspective, turning towards your husband, turning towards your partner, having a love map and knowing what goes on. So responsive is like one of those ongoing human behaviors. A lot of things in marriage are these little nurturing, ongoing, the little things. And like Bob said, being responsive is, kind of dropping things and paying attention. Not all the time.
Yeah, there'll be definitely times. I know, Lynn, when you've wanted to talk to me about some things, I'm preoccupied with work, and I'm, would much rather, or not work, or just whatever's on my mind. Oh, one big thing is the game that I play on my phone. That's
Okay.
a good one when you and
Yes, I don't like the game.
Clash of Clans.
Right.
Anyway, so no, they didn't pay me to put that little plug in there. It's a fun game. I do it with Mikey, our son, and my other son, Rob. And there are times I'll be on that, and I'll be playing that, and Lynn wants to talk, and it's like, but there's tactful ways that you can work on communication too if that's going on. And, you just say, oh, wait, honey, can you just give me a couple of minutes, and then I'll give you some time. And then you just make sure that, when you're done in those 2 minutes, you do drop it, and you then give her the time.
Yes, and you have to understand what responsive means. It doesn't mean making excessive demands. It's a give and take situation. So that's one thing that makes a good husband, being responsive. What else do I think? How about support? Being supportive of your spouse in their endeavors, their dreams, their wacky ideas, their suggestions for a day trip. Maybe you don't want to go, but your spouse really wants to go do something that day. And so being supportive of what your spouse wants to do. What do you think of the idea of being supportive?
Oh, for clearly you have to support, what your wife wants to do, and I try to do that. With Lynn, she does this podcast and had this idea to do this podcast, and marriage meant a lot to her, and of course it does to me too. And I'm like, yeah, at the start I was like, oh, okay, you do all the talking, I'll just do the technology stuff behind the scenes and help get it set up, but you can do all that talking. But now it's like I think it even gets better when both of us get on here and can talk and share this stuff. So it's kind of like coming out of your shell. It makes me come out of my shell, to have to do that. Lynn's the more talkative one in our relationship. She's the social one. I'm just sometimes quite happy to sit back and let her do all the talking. But it's, you just got to jump in there and be supportive and do the things, together.
I think so. And then when one is supportive of the other, even when you might not want to be, it comes back two or threefold to you. When you support your partner, maybe when you don't have the energy to, or you're not crazy about it,
and that's
you
the
support
trick.
your partner, and it comes back to you in happiness because your partner's happy. And
that is what makes, we talked about what makes marriage hard. That was our last discussion, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the areas where you have to work at it, and at that time your wife may want to talk and you may not want to be. You might have had something go on at work and you're totally distracted and want to just come home and veg out and watch TV or play on your phone or whatever it is you like to do at night. But you have to sometimes work to get over that, get over yourself and what you want, and understand that the two of you might, if you're both working, the two of you have been working, and she's had her own job maybe, and wants to talk about that. And you have to be open to that if you're going to have a relationship that's, that really works. And it does take some effort. Sometimes you have to get over your selfishness and your desire to just do what you want. But, in the end, it's good because you both get to grow. You get to grow together, and you have a better relationship.
And for those of you who struggle with going to your spouse and your spouse not really caring or being responsive or being supportive, you might have to ask directly what you want from your spouse. Your spouse might not know what you need or want. Your spouse might not have the behaviors that you would expect in a marriage of reciprocation. So you might have to say, honey, can we just talk? Can you just please listen to me for a couple of minutes? I want to share something that's on my heart, and just have you listen to what I'm going through and what my needs might be right now. I don't really feel like you're fully supportive of me. I'm working hard at this job, and when I get back, the kids are running around, dinner's not made, and I'd like you to, wonder if you can help me out here. So sometimes you just might have to directly ask your spouse. He or she might not be aware of what your needs are in the areas of being responsive or being supportive. And speaking of support, I would like to transition into the topic of finances. Finances and money, financial obligations.
Yes.
It's going to be different for every couple. My husband and I ended up having a somewhat more traditional relationship over the years of the male and female roles. It just happened that way. I started out very highly career oriented with a good salary, and had I stayed in the working world, I probably have a very excellent salary by now. I was high rising professional, but when the third child came around, I just embraced love of family and husband, and so I dropped out of the high-powered career to stay home. So my husband, for most of the years, has been the 99% breadwinner, and we're comfortable with that. And different relationships will have different financial breakdowns, whereas maybe the woman's the higher breadwinner, maybe you have separate accounts for certain expenditures, and so financial is wrapped up in security in a relationship, and it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, and finances can be a source of real huge disagreement too, that you have to be aware of. Certainly in our case, I was, actually I guess I wanted to comment about the job, the 99% support. That if you can if you can do that, and nowadays it's very hard for a couple to be able to do that. It's the economy now. Sometimes both couples end up having to work, and it really depends on what the particular jobs are that you have. In our case, I was blessed to have a good job, technology, computers, paid well enough so that we could afford, to live on just my salary.
You were going
And
to
then,
say...
yeah, and then segueing into the point I started out there with was about finances. So now you've got this money, obviously you have money, you're going to have different views about how you want to spend the money, and different views about whether you can save or spend or donate. And you just have to be open to that and know that your spouse may not agree, or you may not agree with your spouse, or your spouse may not agree with you. So you need to really work on that, because money can be a real source of, marital issues.
Yeah, I want to recommend another podcast that's very excellent for the younger married. It's called Couple Money, hosted by Elle Martinez. So check that podcast out. She has great guests and talks a lot about finances. But again, each couple will have to decide, what is this relationship of the provider, protector? And Bob and I have always lived at or below our means, so we've never really carried much of a debt in our life, except the big items, a house, maybe a car for a few years. So we've
probably
definitely...
Yeah.
And I'm all in favor of career woman. I mean, I was a human resources manager in a male-dominated profession in the trucking industry. I was an Army officer. So I'm very well aware and supportive of a woman, entrepreneurial, wanting to make money. But you look at the family context. What is your balance going to be like? What can you handle? Are you working to the grind 70 hours a week, each of you, with 2 children, and you're making great money, but you're exhausted at the end of the day? It's something to really think about. I've wanted to have a calm, relaxed lifestyle. And Bob, in our philosophy, we ended up home birthing, homeschooling, breastfeeding, and those things don't seem to go along well with a high-powered career, spending hours and hours on a job. So what makes Bob the good husband in that situation is that you supported me. There were times when we had 3 young children and I was exhausted at the end of the day. Remember, we lived in New Paltz, New York, early in our marriage, maybe 7 years into our marriage. You would get home, you had a 45-minute commute each way. You would get home and I just got to go out for a walk, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, okay? And you understood it, and I was fine.
And do whatever,
it's not like I was in a bad mood. I just needed time for me. So a good husband will arrange an environment where the wife or the mom has time for her. And in our marriage, I have taken trips alone, or trips with my oldest son when I was pregnant with the second child. One time I was just recently, like in 2014, I went to Virginia Beach by myself for 4 nights. It was a wonderful vacation. And so just the fact that you've created an environment where I can thrive.
One of the ways that I sought to try to do that, too, was in my decisions about my career, and not trying to get jobs that required me to travel a lot, for instance, where I'd be out of the house, or go into some kind of job that would require all kinds of extra hours, so I'm having to work 10, 12 hours a day. That's time you're not at home, with the family, and especially if your wife is working and, and you're both working, it makes it even more pronounced. And then if your wife is home all day and you're just working all day, then you're really not there to provide that help for her. So I've tried to make that, and I think that's helped definitely in our relationship. And just not, maybe you don't go for that management position if you know that it's going to require you to work all kinds of extra hours. Even though you might make more money, it's like you got to balance it and say, is it really worth it? The time away from kids and family and your wife.
True. And as a husband, I think we learned early on what our needs and our love language was. And I'm definitely a physical person and a person who likes quality time. So because I'm physical, I would not really want a husband with high travel. I like my husband being home at a certain time and quality time. And so speaking of physical, maybe we should talk a little bit about sex. For the last 2 or 3 minutes, we gotta wrap it up in 2 or 3 minutes. We're coming up on 15 minutes.
A PG discussion here, right? So we're not going to go into any details, but I have one thing to say to you guys. One important thing: make sure in marital relations that your wife is enjoying it just as much as you are. It's not just about the guy, and there's so many cases where women aren't necessarily enjoying it. They might, just do it because they feel like an obligation. But guys, make sure that your wife is enjoying it. So that's...
Yeah, there's no way I could have married a guy with a big ego who was all into himself. I don't think I'd be a very happy woman. And so that's a loving thing to do for your spouse in both ways, to both please each other. When you please each other, you end up pleasing yourself. That's probably the biggest secret to this all. What makes for a good husband and a good wife? Be at the service of the other, and then you're happy. And I think we've covered many great topics here. I'm sure we could continue, but again, I like to keep the podcast around 15 minutes. So let me think, what can you do this week? I'd like you to sit down with your spouse and express gratitude for everything going well. And in fact, don't let a day go by without expressing gratitude. When you're in gratitude, you are happy. You have a positive outlook. You're cut down on complaining and criticism. So express gratitude to your spouse. Maybe list a few things you're thankful for that he does as a husband, and you can transition into maybe areas you want to work on in your marriage as it relates to the role of the husband. And so at a future time you can talk about the wife. But today's show was what makes a good husband. And Bob, thank you. You're a great husband. I have no complaints. Very happy, 32 years and running strong. And I hope everybody out there will sit down today and contemplate what makes a good husband, and to think about it and to work on it. So do you have anything else to add?
Nope. I just want to thank you for, being there and helping me grow and be a better person. And that's one of the things that makes a great wife too, is just supporting. And so I thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. And when your spouse thrives, you thrive, and your family thrives, and your community thrives, and everybody's happy. So, until next time, make your marriage great.